And I'll now call upon Minister Shanmugam to begin.
Afternoon, Dr. Thum.
Good afternoon.
Yeah. In your submission, which I think you have a copy of, you assert that Operation Coldstore was conducted for political purposes. There was no evidence that the detainees of Operation Coldstore were involved in any conspiracy to subvert the government. I think in particular your view is that the Singapore government and Mr. Lee Kuan Yew in particular are the sources of this major fake news. They fabricated stories to tar their political opponents as communists. Operation Coldstore had no security basis. It was merely a political exercise for Mr. Lee to jail his political opponents. I think that sort of sums up the views you have set out. This is, of course, not a select committee to examine the evidence for Operation Coldstore. There is a transcript. I'm not asking you yet, but there is a transcript, so eventually you will have to verbalize rather than nodding your head.
Yes.
Nor is this a select committee to examine the activities of the Communist Party of Malaya, CPM. But since you have put up a submission and make some recommendation based on these assertions, I think we will need to look at them.
Yes.
So let us first confirm some background, your own background for record. Your submission states that you are a research fellow in history and coordinator of Project Southeast Asia at the University of Oxford.
Yes.
Are you still a research fellow in history?
As of last year, I've actually switched to anthropology, but
so you're a research fellow in anthropology?
Yes, that's correct. I'm still a historian. Yeah.
Yes, understand. Just so that we understand, is that a full-time position?
It is a visiting professorship in anthropology. The coordinator post is the full-time position.
Right. So do you hold any position in the Faculty of History or any other faculty at Oxford?
Oh, no.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you're a coordinator of this project, Southeast Asia?
Yes.
Right. So as I understand from what you say, you do not have any tenured academic position at Oxford?
No, not tenured. No, goodness, no.
Right. Now, let's then come back to what you say about the CPM in Malaya and Singapore. You refer, I summarized for you the views you have set out, both in your submissions and other writings which are referred to in the footnotes to the submissions.
Yes.
So the political opponents that Mr. Lee sought to tar, I think if we can pick up your ARI paper, which is referred to in footnote 4 of your representations. This is ARI working paper number 211. Can I go to page 3? A copy will be flashed on the screen, so you can look at that. Page 3, the third paragraph. The rapid growth and increasing strength of Singapore's progressive left-wing movements alarmed the British colonial authorities, political rivals, and the leaders of the Federation of Malaya. By 1961, the left wing had coalesced into the opposition Barisan Socialist Party and were on the verge of taking power in Singapore. Formerly part of the ruling PAP, they had been expelled or resigned from the party when it decisively moved away from the left-wing platform it had been elected on. The PAP still claimed to be a left-wing party. So to distinguish themselves, Barisan referred to their movement as the progressive left. You say that. Then in page 4, you say in the second paragraph, so first full paragraph, in order to overcome the Federation government's reluctance to take in Singapore, the British and Singapore governments marketed the Barisan as communist-controlled. And just to get a sort of a broader frame on the political opponents who were tarred as communists by Mr. Lee, I think we have to go to Mr. Lee's own speeches, which I think you referred to. First is the speech by Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, September 15, 1961. You know, it's reproduced on the Battle for Merger. I'll just show you the relevant passage. The most important interested party is the MCP. They do not want to see security in the hands of the central government. They are an illegal organization, and with security in the hands of an anti-communist central government, they fear they will be worse off. They are unable to make any official statements to the press or through other open channels of information. But they have proxies. They have sympathizers and secret party members in the lawful political parties, in the unions, cultural organizations, old boys associations, who make appropriate noises on their behalf. The communists, through their proxies, are therefore trying to cloud and confuse this merger issue in order that you may come to the wrong decision. Then we see a second speech, September 15, also reproduced on the Battle for Merger. For the foreseeable future, the communists have no chance of capturing power in the Federation of Singapore by force of arms. And you can cast your eye over the rest of what he says. But the new recruits have been found, and he refers to Chinese middle schools. And then a speech on September 18, also reproduced in the Battle for Merger. Here he talks about how he acted as a lawyer on behalf of trade unions. And over the page, you can see that he refers to the ABL, Anti-British League. ABL relation to the MCP is like that of the volunteer force to the regular professional army. Then if you look at another speech, September 18, this is reproduced in the Battle for Merger. Here he refers to unions, and he says they are controlled by communists. And then if you look at the 9th of October 1961, original aim of the communists was to call for independent Singapore, and he talks about open front workers who are loudly talking of independence. And then
Mr. Shanmugam, I'm
Yes.
aware of all this. This is in the historical record.
I understand.
Are you getting somewhere with this question?
I will. Let's have some ground rules.
Sure.
We ask the questions. We refer you to such material as we think is relevant. You try not to interrupt when the question is being asked. And then you answer the question that is asked.
Golly, no one gets to answer a question
Thank you.
and ask a question in Singapore, do
Yes.
they?
Thank you. Have you been stopped from answering any questions in Singapore?
No, I was just making a joke. Thank you.
Thank you. I would ask that you avoid jokes here and treat the proceedings seriously. And if you do want to make a joke, try and have some truth to it.
Oh, truth is
Thank
very
you.
important to me.
Yes. We will see about that in a while.
Yes, we will.
Speech by Mr. Lee Kuan Yew on the 9th of October 1961, where he then refers to the Barisan Socialists as a main open front communist organization, and a few cadres planted in the Workers' Party, and penetration of Party Rakyat, and trying to penetrate the United People's Party. And then September 29, 1961, he refers again to the Barisan Socialists as a Communist United Front group, and that they are basically a front for the communists. So while I think one can't be comprehensive, trying to put a list to the people that you call the progressive left, based on what you say, who were falsely taught as communists by Mr. Lee, will include, I suppose, the Barisan Socialists, certainly, the ABL, a significant part of the trade unions, various elements in the Chinese middle schools, some cultural associations, some old boys associations. Would you agree?
Yes.
Thank you. And your position set out in the ARI paper, I think if we look at page 5, at the top, you say the historiography is clear on the lack of evidence of communism. That's lack of evidence of communism on the part of the progressive left, correct?
On the progressive.
By reference to what you say at page 4. I mean, if,
Yes, that's what
yeah,
I wrote.
thank
Yes.
you. And then
Yes.
page 7, if you look at the 3rd and 4th paragraphs, you can cast your eye over it. You talk about the anti-colonial movement, the working class, the reference to Singapore Factory and Shop Workers Union and other unions, the strikes in which were broken up, and the way the unions worked in 1955-56. So just to look at those. Now, since you referred to 1955-1956, I suppose that would include the Hockley bus strikes, which
Yes.
where they were exploited by exploitative employers, correct?
Yes.
And the strikes were led by the progressive left. You heard the question.
Yes, I said yes.
Thank you. And in your view, as you have set out here, the strikes, amongst other things, were not influenced and no active participation of the communists. This
Yes.
was all the progressive left. Okay. Now let's go back to something else that is actually quite, I think, shouldn't be controversial. The post-Second World War period, if you look at it over a period of years, if you look at the region, you had the Party Communist Indonesia, right? Pre-1965, the largest communist party in the world with about maybe up to 3 million members, or maybe largest communist party outside of the then USSR in China, correct?
Yes.
Thailand, you had a communist party which was active, correct?
Yes.
Philippines, you had the Hak rebellion supported by the peasantry.
Who? Yes.
Hook. Thank you. And Vietnam, you had the Communist Party of Vietnam and, of course, the Vietnam War, correct?
Yes.
Laos and Cambodia also had active communist parties, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. And in Malaya, again, not controversial, you had the emergency between 1948 and 1960, a serious armed insurrection, correct?
Yes.
It was, for all intents and purposes, an all-out war between the CPM and the British colonial government in Malaya, correct?
Yes.
If we put some numbers to it, at the height of the fighting between 1951 and 52, there were probably at least 10,000 communist guerrillas involved in the fight. I'll just give you some figures. You tell me whether they make sense to you. Casualties during the emergency for the communists, about 6,700 killed, 1,200 captured, 2,700 surrendered, makes about 10,000 odd. The police and army, about 1,800 killed, civilians, about 3,200 killed or missing, and if you take the police, army, and civilians, about 4,000 wounded. So that gives you a total about 9,000. These figures sort of make sense to you?
They make sense, yes. I don't know the exact figures off the top of my
But
head. Of
they are
course, yeah.
based on various records that you've seen, right? And in terms of the forces involved, 40,000 regular troops, 70,000 police, 350,000 home guards, 21,000 incidents, 8,700 contacts between the CPM, guerrillas, and the forces, correct? Around there.
Around there.
And I'm sure you have come across this, that in dollar terms of that period, probably it cost more than 5 billion Malaysian dollars, right? The fight.
The cost, I don't know. Sounds about right.
Thank
possibly.
you. And you know that in 1951, of course, the High Commissioner Gurney was assassinated. It's a fairly...
Yes.
That's a broad picture between 1945 and 1960. Now, something else which, again, should be non-controversial, in terms of the Marxist theory, it was to create a revolution led by the new fourth estate of industrial workers, right? You would agree with that?
Yeah.
amongst. I mean,
Yes.
it's not the complete theory, but it's part of the theory.
It's part of the theory, sure.
Right. Now, also, and if you need the reference, I can give it to you. But if you look at what Lenin says, one part of his thinking, when he started looking at the countries which had recently become independent or were still colonies, his analysis was that Europe was getting wealth from the colonies. That was being distributed to the European workers. This reduced their revolutionary potential. Thus, there was a need to agitate people in the colonies to overturn colonial rule. And so he directed the setting up of Comintern to spread communism throughout the world, including Asia. That you know, right?
Yes, it's from imperialism, the highest stage of colonialism.
Yes. And Comintern brought communism to Malaysia and Singapore. I think the date, there's some question, but some people will say 1925, some people will say 1930. But
About
that's
there,
about
yes,
it.
yes.
Thank you. Now, another thing, Lenin's views on how communists should behave. This is from the guidelines on the organizational structure of communist parties, methods and contents of their work, 24th session of the Third Congress of the Communist International, July 1921. And he urged acolytes to know how to combine the strictest loyalty to the ideas of communism with an ability to make all the necessary practical compromises to track, make agreements, zigzags, retreats, and so on. That sounds right to you?
Sounds
Yes.
about right, yeah.
Thank you. And in communist theory, the United Front strategy took two forms. United Front from above, in which the communists established contact with the masses by collaborating with leaders of non-communist organizations, and United Front from below, which meant appealing to the rank-and-file members of such organizations over the heads of their leaders. That is fairly standard theory, correct?
Yes.
And significantly, Lenin added that communists must be able to agree to sacrifices, and I'm quoting, and even if need be, to resort to all sorts of stratagems, maneuvers, illegal methods, evasions, subterfuges in order to achieve their end, correct?
Yes.
So let's look at CPM's United Front strategy. The CPM's activities spanned the entire spectrum from armed rebellion and terrorist methods at one end to the use of legal entities like political parties and trade unions in constitutional struggle at the other. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Now, let's look at what senior CPM cadres like Chin Peng and Fong Chung Pik have acknowledged. Basically, CPM's focus shifted back and forth along this spectrum depending on the external circumstances, correct?
Yes.
For example, as the armed rebellion in Peninsular Malaya waned in the early 1950s, the CPM shifted its focus to open front struggle. And this was a period when CPM cadres were active in the so-called middle road unions and political parties, including the PAP. Would you agree with that?
What are the dates?
Maybe you can tell me whether there was any period when CPM cadres were active in the so-called middle road unions and political parties, including the PAP.
There is no evidence in the special branch files of influence by the MCP in the higher echelons of the middle road unions past, I'd say, past 1955.
Okay.
Or late 1954.
Right. Let's, for accuracy, refer to CPM. I mean, you say MCP. I think we are referring to the same.
Yes, CPM, sorry.
Thank
yes.
you. Now, from the earliest times, Comintern has advised, and I quote, there can be no absolutely correct, immutable organizational form for communist parties. The conditions of the proletarian class struggle are subject to changes. In an unceasing process of transformation, the organization of the vanguard of the proletariat must also constantly seek appropriate forms corresponding to those changes. You know that, right?
Yes.
Thank you. And again, this is Douglas Hyde. Title of the book is Peaceful Assault. The United Front, this is not specific to CPM, this is general theory, is the means by which a small minority of communists can influence and use large masses of people and so come to power with the support of people who have no real sympathy for their aims and beliefs. Essence of the tactic consists in discovering popular slogans and genuine grievances around which joint activity may be developed, and then in due course using this activity to strengthen the Communist Party and to destroy its rivals. Really quite standard and trite. Agree?
This is true for all political parties, not just the Communist Party.
Right. Now, I'm not necessarily agreeing with you that it's true for all political parties, but let's at least agree that specific to Communist parties, you don't have a problem with this statement.
Well, every Communist Party has its own local domestic context.
Right.
As a general rule, I suppose it is an effective means of political mobilization.
Thank you. Now, let's look at CPM. You know that originally the initial operations centered on Singapore, and I refer you to page 57 of the book by Ms. Thum Ping. That would be well known to you, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. And in the 1930s, there were two town committees, one of which was in Singapore, correct? Page 58 of Thum
In the
Ping.
1930s? 30s, yes.
Thank you. In 1934-35, police directed 400 plus raids against CPM. You are aware of that, correct?
Yes, my work doesn't cover that period, though.
Yes. And if you look at page 59, about 226 suspected members were arrested. You won't dispute that.
Well, the text says that. Like
Right.
I said, my work is primarily as I said, my work is post-World War II.
Okay. So post-World War II, at the end of the war, Thum Ping says 4,000 weapons were handed over to the British and 5,000 were hidden in the jungle. That you're aware of?
I beg your pardon?
4,000 weapons were handed over to the British. 5,000 were hidden.
Sorry, are you referring to the text?
I'm referring to page 138
there
of
we
Thum
go.
Ping.
Okay.
This is
yes,
post-World War II,
He
correct?
says that, yes.
Yes. But your research shows that too?
This
is
is north
post-World
of the
War.
Causeway. Again, my work is on Singapore.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, January 1946, the General Labor Union, controlled by the CPM, organized a 2-day strike with 150,000 workers called out for the strike. You're aware of that?
The Hartal, yes, that was to protest the Malayan Union proposals and Singapore's separation from the rest of Malaya.
Thank you. The 20th October 1947, a general strike was called, which involved the Chinese Chamber of Commerce, Federation of Trade Unions, All Malayan Council of Joint Action, to protest against Constitution of Malayan Federation and
Malayan
Singapore.
Union. Right.
Yes, that's page 197 of Thum Ping. And he says the Communist Party of Malaya gave strong support to this. You are aware of that?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
And it brought commercial life in Singapore to a standstill. You're aware of that too.
Yes.
Likewise, it brought commercial life in many Malayan cities and towns to a standstill. You're aware of that too.
That's the point of a strike, yes.
Yes. And AMJCA was a key promoter of the protest and was under CPM's influence. You're aware of that?
Yes.
Thank you. And then March 1948, the CPM decided to wage war against the British armed struggle. You are well aware of that, correct?
Yes.
The meeting to decide on the armed struggle took place in Queen Street, CPM's office. Thum Ping refers to it at page 202 and 206, but I think you should be aware of it, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. And CPM had open front organizations in population centers. page 207 of Chin Ping? Yes?
Yes.
1951, page 278 of Chin Ping, Singapore police conducted a series of raids against CPM's infrastructure in Singapore, correct?
Yes. Yes.
And some CPM members were evacuated, including Yu Chui Ip, page 279 of Chin Ping, correct?
Yes. Well, he says that, yes.
You are not aware?
I'm just agreeing that he says that.
I know. But I'm asking you, you are aware of Yu Chui Ip?
Oh,
aren't
yes,
you?
yes, of course, yes.
And you are aware that he went over to the Riau Islands
Yes.
to escape the arrests?
Yes.
Thank you. And you are aware that Yu Chui Ip ran Freedom News, which was the Singapore Underground newspaper, correct?
Yes.
1955, of course, you had the Barling talks, and it went on for some time, but in essence, the CPM said they will never give up the ideology, and Marshall said the governments of Federation and Singapore will never recognize the CPM. You must be aware of it. Aware of that? 383.
Yes, I'm aware of the Barling talks, yes.
Thanks. Not just aware of the Barling talks, but you're aware of what I'm saying, correct?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Now let's look at your submission. I think your position, by reference in your submission, as well as the underlying papers that you have put up, which are referred to in your submission, is basically that this Communist United Front didn't exist and was an invention, correct?
My central contention is that there is no evidence that the detainees of Operation Coldstore were involved in any violent communist conspiracy to subvert and overthrow the Singapore government.
Right. Now, have you said that the Communist United Front was an invention?
No, I have not said it was an invention. I have said it was irrelevant to mainline politics, anti-colonial politics in Singapore past 1954 or so.
So let's get this down very accurately. So is it your position that there was a Communist United Front in Singapore?
Yes.
Yes. In 1959, in 1960, in 1961, in 1962, you accept that there was a Communist United Front in Singapore?
Well, that's a very interesting academic question.
No, I'm asking a question. I would like an answer without comments on the question.
There is no evidence in the special branch files for the existence of a Communist United Front in Singapore in the late 50s. Yeah.
Let me be clear. You are a historian.
Yes.
Based on your assessment of the records, is it your position that there is evidence or there is no evidence, and we are not just referring to special branch files, is it your position that there is evidence or there is no evidence of a Communist United Front between 1957 and 1963?
I think that you'd have to define Communist United Front, because if you define it extremely broadly, then you could say, it depends on how you define it, yes. So in the sense that, was there an active conspiracy, an underground conspiracy led by the CPM in the late 50s? No.
So
Were there people who believed in communism? Yes.
That's not quite my question.
Yeah, well, you'll have to elaborate your question because we want to be accurate.
Yes. I'm asking you for your position. I think you understand the question. We went through the Marxist theories.
Yes.
We went through how United Front operations work.
Yes.
And I showed you what Lenin has said, what others have said. I've defined for you the fact that communist parties would use a variety of front organizations, including trade unions, other front organizations, and to achieve their aims. So in that sense, was there, in your view, between 1957 and 1963, a Communist United Front? Leave out for the time being what their aims were.
Well, I'm asking you what the definition of Communist United Front is, right?
Okay, let's.
Because,
thought-
for example, if you...
Dr. Thum, I'll give you a definition.
Okay.
We will unfortunately have to go back to some of the theory we have both been learning on communism. Let's look at what we saw, Mr. Lee's speech, September 15, 1961. They, meaning the CPM, are unable to make any official statements to the press or through other open channels of information. But they have proxies, they have sympathizers and secret party members in the lawful political parties, in the unions, cultural organizations, old boys associations, who make appropriate noises on their behalf. So for the time being, leave out the part about them making appropriate noises. Just refer to political parties, unions, cultural organizations, old boys associations. Was there a Communist United Front involving all of these organizations?
If the definition includes Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, then yes, there was a Communist United Front,
Right.
and he was part of it.
Right.
Right.
So including Mr. Lee, there was a Communist United Front, correct?
Again,
You just said so.
Yes, and I would like to clarify that that doesn't mean they were in an active conspiracy.
Well,
But
I know
it-
that
it
you would
does
like
in
to
it-
qualify.
I'm an academic, Mr.
Yes,
Shanmugam.
but,
Nuance
you-
is very important.
My
to the truth.
questions are very narrow.
Yes, but academia does not lend itself to narrow questions.
You can explain by all means, but don't worry,
Thank
we will
you. I
explore
will explain.
all of these other issues. So
Okay.
we can move a bit faster if you can put a marker to say you would explain, and then we can come back to it.
Okay, so we will explain the meaning of a Communist
Yes.
United Front.
Well, I thought we just went through Communist United Front, and we have
Well, that's
concluded
what,
that part of the exercise.
No. You see, again, it really depends on the definition, and if the definition is broad enough that you include Mr. Lee Kuan Yew.
I just said yes,
then
assuming you
yes.
include Mr. Lee Kuan Yew.
Yes.
and the PAP.
Will I get a chance to explain that definition that includes Mr. Lee Kuan Yew and why I defined it that way?
Well, perhaps when we go through other questions, if you wish, you can come back to this, maybe not right now. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you. Just to go back to this point, September 15, 1961, Chinese middle schools, he refers to in his speeches. He refers to ABL. He refers to unions. All of these I read to you just now. Barisan Socialists, Partai Rakyat. Let's put the PAP in there, and Mr. Lee Kuan Yew. All of this, you would agree, were part of the Communist United Front?
That's impossible to say. There are no historical records regarding who is and isn't part of the Communist United Front.
Now, let's just be clear.
Yes.
I'm asking you for your views.
Yes.
Is it your view that based on everything you have reviewed, you have no basis to say that the Barisan Socialists, the ABL, the trade unions, and the middle schools were part of the Communist United Front?
I'm saying...
I'm asking for a yes or no answer, and then you can explain.
Sorry, then could you repeat the question?
Yes. Is it your view that based on everything you have reviewed, you have no basis to say that the Barisan Socialists, the ABL, the trade unions, the middle schools...
Wait, you can't lump all of those together. Some may be part, some may not be
I'm
part.
lumping all of them together.
Well, then I can't answer the question.
Well, you can say no and explain.
Okay.
Right. And you have no basis for saying that they were all part of the Communist United Front.
So I have no basis for saying that all these organizations are part of the Communist United Front.
Thank you. Now, do you have any basis
no,
for saying
that was a
any of-
question. I still don't understand your question. I have no basis for saying that the Barisan, the ABL, and the other organizations you...
I think you understand the question, but let me
No,
try
I don't.
again.
Yes, please.
You said earlier that you have come across no historical evidence that they were part of the Communist United Front. So let's come back to that. I'm asking you for your views based on whatever you have reviewed. And of course, if there is no historical record or there are no historical records, then there is no evidence. Okay, so that's by way of background. So based on everything that you've reviewed as a historian, do you have any basis to conclude that the Barisan Socialists, the ABL, the middle schools, a number of trade unions were part of the Communist United Front?
I have a basis to conclude that the Barisan Socialists was not part of the Communist United Front.
Right. What about the ABL?
The ABL, according to Special Branch, was basically defunct by 1954.
Right.
So are we talking about before that?
We
or
are talking about after.
After. Then the evidence indicates that the ABL was defunct by that time.
So you have no basis to conclude that they were part of the Communist United Front after 1954.
I'm sorry, your question is very confusing. I have
Okay,
no
do you have
basis
any
to
basis to conclude? Do you have any basis to conclude that after 1954, ABL was part of the CUF?
If there's no evidence, I can't conclude. I mean, I
Thank
can
you.
only conclude that that there is no evidence,
Right.
and therefore the probability is that they.
Right.
I mean,
What about
the
before
evidence
1954?
The evidence indicates that the ABL. There's a report in Special Branch that the ABL was never very active. It was more of an. It existed more in the imagination of the public. That there was not very much of any underground organization, which is not to say that people did not attempt to join it or join it, or believe very strongly in it, but it was not by any means an effective organization or have any major influence on Singapore politics.
Right. What about before 1954?
Before 1954. During the Malayan emergency, it was it did not have any significant influence on Singapore.
Okay, that wasn't the question.
Well, the
Was
Malayan
it part of the
emergency,
CUF before 1954?
There's no evidence for that.
Okay. Now, earlier on we talked about the CUF. Your position is that the CUF was an invention on the part of various people, including Mr. Lee. Is that your position, or is that not your position, that Mr. Lee invented the idea of a CUF?
He didn't invent the idea of a CUF. He invented the idea of a CUF to suit his purposes.
And can you explain that?
Yes.
Please.
Okay. Well.
And please be brief.
Okay.
In 3-4 lines, if
This is
possible.
years of historical research.
3-4
asking me to
sentences.
summarize.
Yeah, I'm sure you will be able to.
Okay, so there is no evidence in the Special Branch documents, or as you call it today, the Internal Security Department documents, that the detainees of Operation Coldstore were involved in any communist conspiracy to subvert and overthrow the government.
Okay, so your position is that the
this-
detainees, it was his invention that the detainees were part of a Communist United Front.
Of a communist conspiracy, which
Right.
he labeled, among other things, a united front.
Right, understand. Now, you know of the plan Fong Chung Pik, correct?
Yes.
Now, he was a very senior CPM leader. You're also aware of Chang Tai-yong, former ABL and CPM member?
Chang Tai-yong, I'm not familiar with that name.
Right.
There's a lot of names you have to be aware. They're in my files, but I can't recall every single name off the top of my head.
Now, in terms of your review of documents, is it your position that all your conclusions are based simply on the special branch records declassified by Britain?
Also, documents in the US and Australia, plus newspaper reports from the period, plus memoirs and autobiographies, including Mr. Lee Kuan Yew's and others.
Can you tell us which others?
If you look at the bibliography of this article, there is a list. I don't know if you'd like me to read every single one.
It's okay. So it's the people mentioned in the bibliography.
Yes, and I
Right.
think others. And also Chinese newspapers
Now,
in general.
could you help me
Yes.
by telling me whether Chang Tai-yong is referred to in your bibliography?
Okay. I don't see a Chang Tai-yong in this article.
Right. Let me tell you who he is. He was a former ABL and CPM member. Okay?
Yes.
Now let's look at some documents. Fong Chong-pik, I'm sure you're aware of this book, The Memoirs of a Malayan Communist Revolutionary, 2008, at page 122. I'm going to quote to you, "As old you informed me at the time, the entire organization in Singapore had been smashed. In the early 1950s, the original town committee had been dissolved and no longer in existence. The other district-level organizations had also suffered attacks and collapsed. Over the years, the spectacular mass movements were in the main led by the basic-level cadres of the student committee." Now, what do you understand by this paragraph?
Well, it says that in the early 1950s, the CPM's town committee had been dissolved and was no longer in existence. And I think he uses the word smashed. So the CPM, it suggests the CPM was smashed in Singapore by the early 1950s.
Read on. Over the years, the spectacular mass movements were in the main led by the basic-level cadres of the student committee. What do you understand by that?
Over the years, the level cadres of student committee.
It's a fairly simple sentence.
Yes. I'm processing. Please give me a
Yes.
Mr. Fong Chong-pik wrote this, yes.
Yes.
And that he believes that the spectacular mass movements were led by members of the basic level cadres of the student committee.
Cadres of the CPM.
Of the student committee, that's what it says. I believe that, it's what, so what this tells me is it's what he believes.
I understand.
Yes.
In law, we do have the concept of hearsay.
Yes.
So I understand that this is what he says.
Yes.
And so let's accept it at that level. Just like the special branch records that you've reviewed are what the special branch officers have said. So that's, these are the historical records one has. Now, clearly, he is referring to basic level cadres of the student committee in relation to the CPM, correct? And if you disagree with that, please disagree.
No, I assume he's referring to basic level cadres of the student committee.
And
Yes.
not by reference to the CPM.
Oh,
You see, Ms.
I'm not quite
Dr.
clear. So
Thum.
you're saying student committee of the CPM? Is that your
Yes.
question? Yeah. It's the student committee that he refers to is the student committee of
Thank you.
Yes.
Let's now look at what Chang Tai-yong says. You don't seem to be aware of him. I will read to you. This is from a book, Memories of a Hero in the Singapore Underground Organization in the 1950s and 60s. And it's published in Mainstays of the Anti-Colonial Movement, the Legendary Figures of the Singapore People's Anti-British League. Are you aware of this book?
Is it published in Chinese or in English?
It's in Chinese.
Yes, I believe I am aware of the existence of the book, but I don't think I've read it.
Thank you. Now, let me quote to you. This is page 53 by reference to footnote 14. Can we have it up, please? We have, the translation is by a certified translator, so you can take it that it's an accurate translation. We will go to the English version. In the two books, A Pioneer Leader's Dream, Oral History, Recordings of Yu Chui Ip, and the Memoirs of Fong Chong Pik, compiled by Chen Zhen, there was no mention at all that the series of events from the destruction of the CPM Singapore Committee in 1950 to the flourishing movement against colonialism and imperialism and for independence in Singapore in 1957 was actually brought about by the efforts of the student committee led mainly by Ying Ming Chiang and Cham Chong Chen, with the enthusiastic participation of all the underground cadres and the revolutionary masses at large. These events included the 13 May struggle against the national service by Chinese middle school students, the establishment of the Singapore Chinese Middle School Students' Union, the Hockley bus workers' strike, the anti-yellow culture movement, the publications of the various arts groups, the preparations to found the Nanyang University, the founding of the PAP with Lee Kuan Yew to carry out constitutional struggle. Now, I can ask you to tell me what you understand by these paragraphs, but I think it'll be far easier if we just summarized. Based on what Chang Tai-yong says, and he is, as I told you, a former ABL and CPM member.
Do we have proof that he's a former ABL and CPM member?
Well, assume that for the time being.
Well, we never assume in history.
No, I'm, for the purposes of this question, I'm asking you to assume for the time being. You have no idea who he is, right?
No.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Now, Chang Tai-yong says, on the face of it, that there was, after the destruction of the Singapore Town Committee, which we talked about, there was a flourishing movement against colonialism and imperialism that was actually brought about by the efforts of the student committee, which is consistent with what Fong Chong Pik said, and you agreed with that earlier. Mm-hmm. And that was with the enthusiastic participation of all the underground cadres, which is similar to what Fong Chong Pik had said, and you agreed with that earlier. And then he goes on to describe what those events were, including the Singapore Chinese Middle School Students' Union, the Hockley bus workers' strike, the anti-yellow culture movement, and so on. So he identifies a series of events which were the result of the efforts by the Communist Party cadres. Would you consider this to be evidence that, for example, the CPM was involved in the Chinese Middle Schools Union, the Hockley bus workers' strike, and the various other events he talks about?
Well, there are serious problems with this. First of all, if you scroll back up to the first page,
yes,
up to the title at the very top. If you see there, it says Hong Kong Footprints Publishing Company.
Yes.
Now, my understanding of Footprints is that it has been publishing a lot of propaganda by the surviving members of the MCP in order to promote their role in Malayan history.
Right.
Right. So that is something that we need to think about.
Right.
This book and its agenda and what it's trying to achieve.
All right.
Second of all, if you scroll down,
Yes.
and if you go further down, now it says, it lists two names there, Ng Ming Chiang and Cham Chong Chen. It's not possible that they were involved because they were arrested by special branch and banished around 57, 58.
Right.
So
57, 58. I think if you read the paragraph, he says from after the smashing of the town committee in 1950, So the fact that they disappeared in 57, 58 is not inconsistent with what he says.
Special Branch also records that Comrade D, that's Ng Ming
Yes.
Chiang,
Yes.
was completely incompetent and had very little.
I understand.
His leadership actually destroyed the party,
Right.
mainly due to his misuse of party funds and his habit of hooking up with his comrades' girlfriends.
Yes.
So the Special Branch evidence actually would indicate Ng Ming Chiang was highly incompetent and would indicate he had very little role
Right.
in trying to promote.
Now, you have not reviewed this particular book and you have not read this particular passage, right?
No, I'm reading it for the first time now, and
Right.
this is my.
Now, would you
5-second
agree
opinion.
that your task as a historian commenting on this period should have involved reading relevant material, particularly if they are from Communist Party cadres who set out their version of what has happened?
Oh, of course, and I will take a look at this
Thank you.
after this, yes.
Thank you. Now, let's go back to the passage. We agreed that the first part of what he says, that the flourishing movement against colonialism and imperialism and for independence in Singapore in 1957 was actually brought about by the efforts of the student committee. I'm not asking you a question. I think we agreed earlier on that is similar to what Fang Chong Pik had said. Secondly, that the underground cadres and were participating in all of this is also similar to what Fang Chong Pik had said, which we were good enough to agree. Now, the last point is, are you in any position to disagree with what Chang Tae-yong says about, for example, the communist cadres being involved in the Hockley bus workers' strike?
Yes, I'm in a position to disagree.
And you disagree on the basis of?
Special Branch documents.
Do they
These-
say that the Communist Party cadres were not involved?
Yes, these documents were Communist Party internal documents that Special Branch seized shortly after Hockley bus riots, which showed that the bus riots had taken the cadres on the ground completely by surprise.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, that is quite different from the question I asked. The question I asked was, do you have any evidence that the Communist Party cadres were not involved in the Hockley bus workers' strike? Any clear evidence?
Well, I feel like I've answered that question with my answer.
Because-
the internal party documents seized by Special Branch indicate that it took them by surprise.
Right. Now, you would be able to show us the precise passage?
Yes, if you would like, I can go dig it out.
Yes, please.
Okay.
You can do that later.
Oh, okay.
Yes, but please come back to that. If what Chang Tae-yong says is correct, that
It's not.
indeed, no, let me ask you
Okay.
by phrasing it. If what Chang Tae-yong says is correct, then your evidence given much earlier today, in the beginning, that there is no involvement by Communist Party cadres in the Hockley bus workers' strike would be inaccurate. Agree? If Chang Tae-yong is correct. Yes.
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
If.
Uh,
He's a very unreliable source, as I pointed out.
Well, I think you need to be careful about characterizing sources when you haven't even read the book and you don't know who he is.
Yes, but I am just reflecting on the what you've given me here, right? It seems
Yes.
he said things which clearly are already untrue. So how do we know the rest
I
of it is
think,
true? We need to
we just
understand it in the context.
What is it that he has said which is clearly untrue?
The leadership of Ng Ming Chiang, as I mentioned, Comrade D, the historical record shows he was highly incompetent. There is no way he could have led the. Could you bring it back up, please? I can point it out again.
Yes.
And also the involvement of.
So you disagree with him that Ng Ming Chiang, Comrade D's leadership could have brought about this?
Yes, because he has the historical record shows that
Okay.
he was highly incompetent, and also the involvement the May 30s?
Let's just stop there. Let's go back to what Yu Chuyib says. Yu Chuyib describes the mass movements as being spectacular over the years after the 1950 dissolution of the original town committee. You and I agree that they were led for a period by Comrade D, particularly after Yu Chuyib had to leave Singapore, which was by 1951.
What remained of the underground MCP was for a time...
I haven't asked a question.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Now, those spectacular mass movements took place, if Fang Chuanpi is correct, under the leadership of Comrade D, correct? Because he was the one in charge. If Fang Chuanpi is correct.
Fang Chuanpi is not saying that. He's saying they were in the main led by the basic level cadres of the student committee.
Yes.
He is not saying they were led by Comrade D, nor is he saying they were led by the CPM or any organized
I think
manner.
we agreed just now. Please don't try and qualify your answers. That the student committee there refers to student committee
You
of
do
the
realize
CPM.
I'm an academic. I have to qualify
Well,
my
academic
answers.
doesn't mean that you don't tell the truth.
I am telling the truth, but
Well,
the truth requires explanation.
Miss
That's why our
Dr.
papers are
Thum,
10,000 words
Dr.
long.
Thum, I'm referring to your answer earlier.
Yes.
We both agreed that the basic level cadres of the student committee there refers to, and if you want, I can show you in the transcript, refers to student committee of the CPM. Okay, so let's not go back to that.
Yes.
Okay. So having established that, and Fang Chuanpi says, based on what Yu Chuyib told him, and they are both very senior, that there were spectacular mass movements. These spectacular mass movements took place at the time when, this is to make you feel a bit happier, at the time when Comrade D was in charge on the ground, correct?
These spectacular movements took place in 1957, 58. That's the time where Comrade D was in, yeah.
Thank you. So now we have your confirmation. Go back to what Chang Tai-yong says. We have your confirmation that there were these spectacular mass movements. Another word for it would be a flourishing movement or a successful movement. They were brought about the efforts of the student committee. You don't disagree with any of that. I think what you disagree with is...
Sorry, they were brought about by the basic level cadres of the student committee. That's what he says.
I understand. And we agreed that at that time, Comrade D was in charge. Now, what you disagree with is that Comrade D's leadership brought that about. That's what you disagree with, correct?
I also disagree with this. If what you're implying is that there's any other leadership to this committee or any
Right.
organized
Okay.
underground conspiracy.
All right. Now, and you will give us the seized Communist Party records and the special branch. You will refer us to the special branch records in due course. Okay?
Yes, yes.
Let's put a marker on
although
that.
you are Minister for Home Affairs and ISD is under your remit, so you have those documents already.
Well, I would prefer that they come from you.
Oh, well, I'm very honored you trust me more than the Internal Security
No,
Department.
it's not a question of trust. We are sitting here as a select committee,
Right.
and you say you have referred to these documents. I would like to get them from you
Okay,
and see what you have referred to.
okay.
Okay. Now let's look at what Fang Chong-pik says again. Again, the earlier reference, now page 124. We were informed that the Central Committee took a positive view of the widespread development of the open mass movement in Singapore and sent its praises. It believed that the impact of the movement could affect the direction of the political development in the whole country. And then, again, struggle in Singapore should be regarded and conducted as an integral part of the armed struggle in Malaya. Guiding principle of the mass work in Singapore was to bring colonial rule in Singapore under British imperialism to an end by substituting illegal activities with open legal struggles and expanding and consolidating the anti-colonial United Front. Are you aware of his writings in this aspect?
Yes.
What do you understand him to be saying?
That he approves of the events in Singapore.
Well, can you be a little bit more explanatory as to read through what I've put out and explain to me what you understand by that?
Oh, okay. Well, so it says we were informed that the Central Committee took a positive...
I don't need you to read it out. You read it to yourself and explain to me in your words what you understand by it.
Well, what I understand is that he and the Central Committee took a positive view, and that the struggle in Singapore was was important to the anti-colonial struggle throughout Malaya. Yes. And
including the armed struggle in Malaya, correct?
The anti-colonial struggle in Malaya.
What do you understand by the reference to struggle in Singapore should be regarded and conducted as an integral part of the struggle in Malaya? Wouldn't you say that refers to the armed struggle? And if you disagree, please
I disagree. It refers to the anti-colonial struggle, not the armed struggle.
Anti-colonial struggle,
yes.
Dr. Thum, could take place in a number of ways.
Yes.
So we are not talking about the ends, we are talking about the means. At that time, the emergency was still on and there was an armed struggle going on.
Not in Singapore.
I'm quite happy for you to disagree. That just goes to our assessment of your credibility based on all the records. So this part, I think, is quite trite. Would you not agree? I put the question again, that when he refers to the struggle in Malaya, that is a reference to the armed struggle in Malaya.
No, I disagree.
Thank you. And what do you mean, what do you understand by the reference, the guiding principle of the mass work in Singapore under British imperialism in Singapore was to bring colonial rule in Singapore under British imperialism to an end by substituting illegal activities with open legal struggles and expanding and consolidating in the anti-colonial United Front? What do you understand by that?
The line of the MCP at the time was that armed struggle was ultimately futile and that they should focus on legal activities. And in Singapore, in particular, because the armed struggle had never taken off, the focus of the anti-colonial movement was on legal constitutional activities such as winning elections, to basically anything that was legal.
Right.
The anti-colonial struggle should be a legal one.
So they
and
should,
constitutional one.
They should stop the armed struggle and other illegal activities, and they should focus on expanding and consolidating the anti-colonial United Front, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
May I also point out, though, that Chin Peng was cut off from Singapore following the beginning of the emergency, and that the special branch regularly intercepted attempts by couriers in Singapore to reach the Central Committee, and that, if I remember correctly, he does say elsewhere in this book that he did not have any knowledge of what was going on in Singapore at the time, and only found out much later.
He says a lot of things in his book.
Yes.
And if necessary, we will look at them.
Yes.
Now, you would accept the strikes and the students' actions, which we saw earlier, were integrated part of this struggle?
Of the anti-colonial struggle?
Yes.
Yes, the strikes and the student movement was an integral part of the anti-colonial struggle against the British in Singapore.
And with the CPM behind it, correct?
No.
Well, we will go around in circles. You agreed with me that Fang Chong Pik statement showed that the mass movement was being managed by the student committee of the CPM.
No, he did not say that. He said it
Okay,
was led in the main by low-level. If you want to bring it up again, I can show you what he said.
I will tell you what he says.
Okay.
Actually brought about by the efforts of the student committee of the CPM. That's what you said.
Can we bring it up again,
Yes.
please?
Yes. And we can deal with this point as many times as you like until we get to.
Are you showing a lot of documents? Which one are we talking about now?
Tab 11.
No, this is.
The guiding principle. Sorry.
That was Thum Ping just now.
Yeah. Tab
this is
11,
you.
please.
Here we go. In the main, led by the basic level cadres of the student committee. That's what he says.
Now, I'm referring to tab 11. We will bring it out in a minute. Yes.
This is Zhang Taiyong. You said.
No, I'm talking about Fang Chongpi.
Yeah, this is Zhang Taiyong.
We will bring up Fang Chongpi. You know, they don't expect you to qualify what you said about 10 minutes earlier, so we need to get back to documents that were referred to earlier. Page 122, sorry, tab 10A. My mistake, I apologize. Yeah. As old you, yes, you were right. Okay, as old you, Chui informed me at the time, the entire organization in Singapore had been smashed. And then you scroll down to the bottom of the paragraph.
Yes, basic level, led by the
cadres of
basic
the-
level cadres of the student committee, which he says had almost all been wiped out. And he also says he was the only remaining cadre of the office
I asked you,
in underground activity in Singapore.
let's go to I asked you earlier, and if you want to disagree with what you said to me earlier, please do. I said the student committee there is a reference to student committee or the CPM. Are you now reciling from that evidence?
No.
Thank you. Then that's enough. Because that was your evidence. And if you want to recile, I would like you to put that on the record and explain why you are reciling. But if you're not reciling,
I'm
we
saying
can move on.
you didn't seem to understand my answer, right? I feel as if you're putting words in my mouth. And I
No.
would like to clarify.
I asked.
May I have the opportunity to clarify then?
Just give me a minute. Let me tell you what I asked. Over the years, the spectacular mass movements were in the main led by the basic level cadres of the student committee. I asked you that refers to the student committee or the CPM, and you were good enough to say yes.
Yes, it refers to the student committee of
Thank
the
you.
CPM.
That is all that I need.
Okay.
Now, let's move
This
on.
does not imply any conspiracy led by the student
I know
committee.
you're very quick to want to qualify that. Whether you are telling it as it is, whether it is accurate, we will discuss
I'm
later.
sorry, are you saying I'm not representing the truth as I see it?
I'll tell you exactly what I'm saying. I'm telling you that whether that is accurate, what you've just said, we will come to later. But for the time being, we just need to pin down
Right.
the basic facts.
So you do accept I am telling you the truth as I believe it.
Well, I'm in no position to accept that right now because this is an inquiry. We're asking you questions. We will take a view on the evidence that you have given by reference to the documents eventually.
Okay.
Now, so having given that answer, let's go to Fang Chongpi's quote at tab 11A. About the struggle in Singapore. The struggle in Singapore should be regarded and conducted as an integral part of the struggle in Malaya. I think you said You don't agree that that refers to armed struggle in Malaya. Then we were in the next sentence. The guiding principle of the mass work in Singapore was to bring colonial rule in Singapore under the British imperialism to an end by substituting illegal activities with open legal struggles and expanding and consolidating the anti-colonial United Front. It's from the same, pretty much the same passage as we were looking at earlier. Obviously, he is referring to the open legal struggles to be conducted and managed by the CPM. Agree or disagree?
To be conducted and managed by the CPM.
Yes.
They attempted to do that, I agree.
Thank you. Now, you were aware of Fang Chuanpi's writings, correct, prior to today?
Yes.
And you have read all of this?
Yes.
Thank you. Do you refer to these specific passages anywhere in your writings?
In my thesis?
In your
yes.
thesis, but in your published writings here, in ARI or in your conclusions?
Let me see here. Fang Chuanpi is not cited in my RE document, no.
Thank you. Now, by 1958, by 1958, CPM's armed struggle was in difficulties, correct? If you want a reference, I can give it to you.
North of the Causeway, yes.
Yes. And CPM had to revert to political campaign using the underground, correct?
That was the decision, the line, party line, yes.
Thank you. And guerrillas moved from Malaysia to Singapore, helped by CPM's underground in Singapore, correct?
I'm not familiar with that.
Let me show you 405 of Thum Ping. So you are not aware of this, correct? That's what you just told us. You can, I'm just refreshing your memory, but anyway, we'll take your answer as no, you're not aware, and move on. Now, what Thum Ping says is they were to reintegrate back to mainstream societies in Malaya and Singapore. These guerrillas considered reliable and capable enough to work on underground rules. But since you're not aware, I'm just showing it to you and moving on.
Okay, I accept that that's what he wrote.
No, you accept that's what he wrote, but A, you haven't looked at this before, and B, you are not aware of this. I mean, based on your earlier
answer. I've looked
answer.
at it before. You know, I can't remember every single thing that every single person writes.
Right. This is the Secretary General of the Communist Party of Malaya.
Who had no awareness of what was going on in Singapore.
This is the Secretary General of the Communist Party of Malaya who writes about what he knows about Malaya and Singapore.
Yes.
I asked you whether you are aware of guerrillas, Communist Party guerrillas moving in from Malaysia to Singapore. Your answer was you are not aware of that. Is that an accurate answer, or do you want to change it?
You know, that's an accurate answer.
Thank you.
Thank you for refreshing my memory about the guerrillas.
Right. You have any reason to disbelieve what Thum Ping has written?
No.
Thank you.
I do have. I would caution against. Well, as any historian will tell you, you have to carefully interrogate the source because people's memories are not always accurate.
Right.
There are things in there
But,
which are demonstrably
I presume
wrong.
that you have not interrogated this source because you weren't even. It didn't even register when I asked the question.
No, I don't feel that this is very relevant.
No, that's not the question I asked. The point is you hadn't sought to interrogate or apply your mind to this particular passage in Thum Ping.
No.
Correct? Thank
No.
you.
Yeah.
Now, through 1959, senior CPM political cadres in Singapore received directions from Xiao Chang in Beijing, correct? Again, if you are not aware, please say so.
Are you referring again to what Thum Ping wrote?
Well, before you interrogate me, I ask the question, are you aware of this? I'm asking you because you're a historian of this period.
No, I don't think it happened.
Okay. You don't think that they received directions from Xiao Chang in Beijing?
No.
Okay. Now,
There
let
is
me,
no evidence in the special branch documents for that, for one.
Right. Let me show you page 408 of Jinping. Now, throughout the meetings, Xiao Chang in Peking was kept up to date with our deliberations through a radio link. He was able to participate.
Yeah, there's no
And-
mention of Singapore in that passage.
Let me tell you that there is such a passage, and I
Okay.
will refer to it. I think that I've got the page number wrong, but when I find it, I'll give it to you.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Now, let's now look at page 409. Okay, sorry, there it is. As CPM Central Committee grappled with the problem of phasing out its army through 1959, we were forced to leave our senior political cadres in both Malaya and Singapore very much to their own devices. What little party direction they received came from Xiao Chang in Peking, who was able to maintain an effective, albeit slow, message dispatching and receiving system. Now, stopping there,
Yes.
again, you did not put much attention to this and you have not interrogated this source, correct?
There is no evidence that communist or any cadres in Singapore, as might have existed, were receiving direction from Beijing, from Xiao Chang.
No evidence apart from what the Secretary General of the CPM says, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. And at page 409, let's go through this quite carefully. Yeah. Now, in Singapore, 1959 was a crucial election year. Historically, our town committee there had always functioned with a high level of autonomy. Throughout the emergency, I had been unable to exert any reasonable degree of control over the CPM's operations on the island. One committee grouping after another had been smashed by British-directed police action in early stages. Thereafter, our island-wide political network was continuously being compromised by betrayals and defections. Still, the party had been able to amass and maintain a huge following among the working class. Historians and self-appointed political pundits have frequently claimed that we in the Central Committee were dismissive of the Singapore Town Council and regarded them as a bogus operation. Such claims are groundless. From our Sadao headquarters, we naturally observed the run-up to the Singapore polls in May 1959 with considerable interest. We had concurred with our town committee on the island that the CPM should solidly throw its support behind lawyer Lee Kuan Yew and his PAP. A leading PAP election agent who worked closely with Lee was our man. He was a card-carrying member and reported regularly to his town committee. I'm sure Lee didn't realize the electoral agent was a hardcore communist at the time. He certainly knew the man had close and useful communist contacts. I always felt that Lee's attitude towards our underground activists in his camp was purely pragmatic. The young PAP leader would use him as much as he could and use his contacts with the devil. We regarded the arrangement in very much the same light. I cannot, with any degree of accuracy, place a public figure on the numbers of people we controlled among the Singapore voting public in 1959. But I can certainly say that most of the island's workers sympathized with the left-wing trade unions, and members of these unions well appreciated they were under the control of the CPM. Would you agree with these statements?
They do contradict each other.
Right. So which parts do you disagree?
Well, I'm not sure what to agree. If you scroll back to the top,
Yes. Go through and tell me which part you disagree with.
so it says he was unable to exert
Hang on a
any
minute.
reasonable degree of control, right? and that the island-wide political network was continually compromised by betrayals and defections. He doesn't mention arrests and banishments and so on. And then he then goes on to suggest that he was observing the run-up to the Singapore polls with considerable interest. And so the suggestion that if you're saying that he had a hand in what was going on in Singapore at the time, it's quite clear that he hasn't.
Dr. Thum.
But on the other hand,
Dr.
if
Thum,
you're
please
saying
stop
that
there. Please stop there. My question, just in case you didn't hear it, is this. I read to you from the top and I stopped at up to the point when I can certainly say that most of the island's workers sympathized with the left-wing trade unions, and members of these unions well appreciated they were under the control of the CPM. I stopped there. And I asked you if you agree. You said
okay, so
you might have some comments. So I'm asking you, which part, which statement do you disagree with? If there is anything that you disagree with, please tell us.
Yeah, scroll down. So I think
So I'm not
the
asking you
first
for
two
a general
paragraphs
commentary. Yeah.
are I guess reasonably uncontroversial. And Lee Kuan Yew's collaboration with the underground CPM, that is well known. Then if you go down, I cannot with any degree of accuracy place a figure on numbers of people we controlled. Yes. But then he says, but I can certainly say that most of the island's workers sympathized and members is well appreciated. There is, if he is unable to, with any degree of accuracy, place a figure, how does he know that the workers sympathize with the left, that the members of the unions appreciate that they were under the control of the CPM?
First, can I take it that, again, this is a page that you haven't carefully interrogated yourself?
No, I've seen this. I've read his
I'm talking about your role
autobiography.
as a historian. Did you
Yes.
carefully go through and interrogate, as using your words, this particular page, the points here?
The book. Yes, I've been through the book.
I didn't ask you that question. You
Okay,
gave
well,
me
this page is part of the book, so yes.
You carefully interrogated the various things that have been said in the book, because that's contradictory to what you said earlier.
Well, if I don't remember specific passages from the book, it doesn't mean that I didn't read the book.
I didn't say that.
My thesis was
please,
in
Dr. Thum,
2007.
please. Let's be quite precise here.
Yes, let's be very precise.
I'm not suggesting to you that you didn't read the book, so please don't tell me that.
Okay.
We've gone through various passages. Some of them didn't strike a bell, or the facts stated there didn't strike a bell, and you were good enough to agree that you didn't pay much attention to them and you didn't, quote unquote, interrogate them. So I'm asking you, this page, the facts stated here, what the Secretary General of the CPM says, did you carefully look at it and analyze it and come to a view, or you also pretty much disregarded it?
Now, given that this page
Now, please,
specifically
I
mentioned,
want an
yes, I
answer.
looked at this page and I definitely took it into account.
Right. Now, is this, the facts stated here, do they appear anywhere in the submission and the references in the submission and your ARI paper?
My submission says that there is no evidence that
No,
the
I've asked you a
detainees
simple
of
question.
Operation Coldstore were involved in any communist conspiracy to
Dr.
overthrow
Thum,
the government.
please listen to the question and answer the question that is asked.
I just answered the question.
No,
Could
you
the
did not.
witness please respond directly to the questions? Okay.
Well, he asked me what is in my submission.
No, I
right?
didn't ask you what's in your
I
submission.
just gave you what's in my
I
submission.
will tell you
It
again what I
excludes this.
asked. Your
Yes.
submission refers, for example, to the ARI paper. ARI paper, in turn, has a bibliography.
Yes.
I'm asking you whether the ARI paper or anything else that you have published refers
Or
to,
anything else that I believe
other
I
than
have.
your thesis, other than your PhD thesis, anything
Right.
else that you have published, does it refer to the Chin Peng's views on these points?
I will need to check. What
But you
else
can
I
check
have
the ARI
published.
paper straight away.
Well, the ARI paper, I don't believe refers to Chin Ping.
Right,
I'm pretty sure my thesis refers to Chin Ping
Right.
and to Fang Chuanpi and Yu Choi Yip.
right. Now, let's come back. You agree with the first, second paragraphs. The last paragraph which I stopped at. Your point is, looking at it, you are now telling me it sounds odd and contradictory because if he doesn't know the public figure on the numbers of people we control among the Singapore voting public, how can he then know that most of the island's workers sympathized with the left-wing trade unions? Now, you are a
No. That's not what I disagree with. I
Yes.
disagree that he believes that he can say that members of these unions well appreciate that they were under the control of the CPM. The fact that most of the island's workers sympathize with the left-wing trade unions is well known.
Yes.
That's not controversial. It's
So-
the next line.
And how is
Right.
that contradictory to the earlier sentence?
Well, if he doesn't know what was going on in Singapore, and at the top
He doesn't
says
say
was-
that. He doesn't say that. He says, I cannot, with any degree of accuracy, place a public figure on the numbers of people we controlled among the voting public. How is that contradictory to his statement that members of these unions appreciated they were under the control of the CPM? He's talking about two different
In addition
things.
to this page, we have plenty of evidence from Special Branch that he did not have.
Dr. Thum, please answer the question that I've asked.
Well, you're asking me how do we know that he?
No,
does
that
not-
wasn't the question.
Okay.
You said you disagree because, and I notice you're very quick to try and change your answer. So please, you said that you cannot, he says he cannot with any degree of accuracy place a public figure on the numbers of people we controlled among the Singapore voting public. And that contradicts his statement that members of these unions well appreciated they were under the control of the CPM. Can I suggest to you that there is no contradiction between those two statements?
You can suggest that. I wouldn't agree with it.
Okay, so in your view, there is a contradiction.
Yes.
Explain the contradiction.
Well, he does not know what's going on in Singapore.
No, he
so-
doesn't say that. He says, I do not know a precise number. I cannot with any degree of accuracy place a public figure on the numbers of people we controlled among the voting
Can
public.
I clarify? Am I only supposed to answer that question with reference to this one paragraph?
Yes, first.
Well, then the question cannot be answered. We
Well,
don't
the
base our
quest-
arguments on one single page.
The question is based now on exploring why you say there is a contradiction. If you are happy to agree that there is no contradiction, then we can move on to the broader points.
No, I'm saying I can't answer that question without reference to a wider set of documents
Let
and
me tell you
sources.
why, because I'm not asking you a wider question.
No, you're
I'm
asking
going-
me a specific question, and I'm telling you, in order to answer that question,
Let me
I need
finish,
to make reference.
Dr. Thum. I think we agreed on the ground rules.
Yes, Mr. Shanmugam.
Thank you. We are focusing on your answer that you saw a contradiction between those two sentences. I'm not talking about the wider context yet. Would you be good enough to agree, and anybody who reads English can see this, there is no contradiction on the face of it between those two sentences? Then we can talk about the wider construct.
I still feel that first sentence implies he does not know what is going on in Singapore.
So you read, I cannot with any degree of accuracy place a, hang on a minute.
Order. Sergeant Arms, you please take care of that.
Yeah, you can talk outside later on what's wrong. No, these are just blank papers. I'm just trying to write my notes. That's it.
Okay.
No, I'm just trying to write my notes here. But I don't want to miss his hearing. No, he will continue his hearing, but I want to follow his hearing, which is why I purposely came here. Yeah, you can just take a look. It's here.
Sergeant at Arms, could you please request the person to leave so that we can carry on our proceedings? Thank you. At 3:50.
Surely we can do that in 5 minutes.
Yeah, okay, 5 minutes. Okay, back here.
And in that 5 minutes, maybe you can look for the document that you said you will show to me. Remember the special branch record that shows that there's
May
the
I
Communist Party.
Is it all right if I take a toilet break?
Sure.
Thank you.
And then remember the record about the Communist Party records, which show that they were taken by surprise by the Hockley bus riots.
Okay. It might take me more than 5 minutes, though.
Yes.
There's a lot of documents.